This is Next Radio 2016 with Broadcast Bionics. Innovative solutions for creative people.
So I think I need to apologise to you to start with, because I'm about to drag the entire tone of this conference down, because I'm from the venal and grubby world of marketing and advertising. So I apologise for the next 18 minutes, although last time I checked, it was us that was still paying to keep the lights on in British radio. Win them over immediately. One of the most common frustrations I hear from marketers today is their inability to truly connect with audiences. The sense that in creating communications and in making content, they are faking intimacy and understanding. And that's the smart marketers. Frankly, the others are in denial that their brands and messages mean anything to anybody. That's the conversation that I really want to start today, how we stop faking it and create more meaningful content and communications that benefit brands and audiences alike, particularly in the glorious and dynamic medium that is radio. And odd though it may seem, the starting place I want to begin with is the oddly corrosive power of simplicity. In many ways, simplicity is the killer app of great marketers. Their ability to simplify the crazy and complex world outside their businesses is both prized and applauded. The concern I have, though, is that the simplicity we all crave, primarily to make our life easier and not better for our audiences. And that's at the heart of our inability to really connect with real people. Simplicity is, in a sense, self-serving. And that the pursuit of simplicity is actually delivering industrial-sized quantities of marketing stupidity that is then dumped on our audiences from a very great height. Our current obsession with generational marketing, and in particular, the completely fabricated concept of millennials, is one such example of this rank and rampant stupidity. Stupidity driven by brand-centric research, bland and meaningless segmentation studies. You know, the sorts of ones that come up with groups called value-conscious Val or social maximizers. They're stupid pen portraits that the research department deliver up to you. Simplistic assumptions about human behavior and what are frankly generic and cliched observations masquerading as insight. It's what the writer Douglas Holt calls science-y marketing. How appropriate in this venue. Activities that appear to be scientific, but actually on closer scrutiny are nothing of the sort. And perhaps this has always been the case. However, in recent years, our desperate drive for automation at all costs has had the disastrous effect of weaponizing our stupidity, making it far more damaging than it once was. Marketing, once the source of connection between brands and audiences, is now in real danger of doing precisely the opposite, of driving them apart. And if you can't stand the idiocy of the behavioral targeting that you are subjected to online, or you find the content of your average radio ad break an affront to people's intelligence, then you'll know what I mean. What we need, ironic though it may seem, is an audience-first revolution in marketing. One in which we stop obsessing about the things that we really care about and start focusing on the things our audiences really care about. And it's probably not our brands and our radio stations. Now, this may seem to you to be the very definition of proper marketing, and indeed it is. But I think we would have to accept that it's not how most brands seem to operate these days. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in this pickle. So recently I did an experiment. I ran an experiment along these lines with a group of people who represent 18 million women in this country who identify themselves as mum, an audience that we generally in marketing consider to be one homogenous group of people. 18 million, that's a bloody big segment. and who are woefully served by the marketing industry. Only 19% of British mothers say that there are any examples of mums that they can relate to in advertising in any medium. So on behalf of Mumsnet, with whom we have a partnership, I abandoned all this top-down segmentation, all those ghastly and hideous assumptions about the audience and their lives. And I abandoned conventional research. Instead, I simply set out to understand what mums themselves care about, how they self-organize, and who they identify with. And then whether this understanding could yield fresh and meaningful insight about their lives that might be useful to us. And this is the result. 66 glorious identities. It's not necessarily clever, but it's certainly big. This is them in all their glory. The 66 different groups that mums identify with, decided upon by them and named by them, not without me mediating the whole process, and without the involvement of marketers or researchers. We got to this by analysing the topics and conversations that mums were having with each other on online forums and social media. So it's really difficult to see, but right up the top, there's a group which is mums with multiple kids or twins, which is the single most intense identity that any group of mothers have. That sense of experience and commonality that mums with multiples have. Down here we've got a group, mums who are freelance or self-employed, massively increasing group, the so-called mumpreneurs, but that itself would be a ghastly segmentation, wouldn't it? Right at the bottom, mums who are LGBT parents, and in the middle, the syringe, that's actually mums with diabetes, not what you think it is. Okay, so importantly, all of these groups are categorically not segments, because on average, mums identify with 6 of them, and some mums many, many more, because the complexity of their experiences means that they identify with many more women. Their identities each with its own meaning for mum, and then all of those identities were quantified for both volume, so how important they might be to us, and the intensity with which those identities frame their experience of motherhood. In other words, how important it is to them. We then spent time with a handful of these groups, the 6 you can see. I would have loved to have done many more of those groups, but the generosity of Saatchi & Saatchi when it comes to free research does have its limits. So we trained a mum from each of these identities to research the group herself. And this is where the gold dust lies, I think. Simple, implementable insight driven out of these identities about the stuff that they really care about, rather than from starting with the stuff that we're interested in. For instance, right now, there are 2.5 million women in the UK who identify themselves with other mums who have just one child. By 2020, 50% of all families in the UK will have just one child. And the big thing that pisses them off right now is the way that value is effectively denied to them, because most value from most brands is driven by the quantity that you purchase, forcing them either to buy too much or waste money. There are 1.4 million women in the UK who identify with other mothers who've got children with some form of special need, an identity that's right at the heart of their experience of parenthood. Yet little marketing ever addresses this group and the things that are really powerfully important to them. A rare example is the special movie screenings that Odeon Cinemas offer to mums who have autistic children, where the lights are a little higher and the sound is a little lower. This example is the profound influence that package holidays have, and importance that package holidays have for mums with some forms of special needs children, because they offer a certainty and dependability that they can share with their children before they go. I really don't know of any package holiday companies that have ever explored that insight. And what about the 5.5 million mums of teens, a life stage we routinely edit out of our understanding of motherhood? And one that ought to be fascinating for marketers, since the evidence is that not only are brands, retailer, and perhaps even radio station repertoires changed amongst those kids, but they have a profound effect on the repertoires of their mums too. If I was Marks and Spencer's, I'd be really fucking worried about the influence of teens on their older mothers. Now, I offer you this little diversion into motherhood, not because it's necessarily relevant for you, although there is a white paper I can send you if you really want to know more, but because it shows with one audience, the power of flipping the lens from what's important to you and your brand or business to what's important for your audience. And then and only then figuring out how you might serve and connect with them better. And if this whole approach seems rather complex, that's because real life is a bit complex and we really need to deal with it. As the ecologist Tim Berlow said in his 2010 talk, the more that you step back and embrace complexity, the better chance you have of finding simple answers. And it's often different to the simple answer that you started out with. In other words, simplicity is possible, but it only exists on the other side of complexity. That there simply isn't a shortcut. And the reason to talk to you today about this law is perhaps because radio is self-evidently the ideal medium to embrace complexity, both in content, programming, and advertising. You have the immediacy, the flexibility, the cost efficiencies, and goddamn intimacy that should allow brands to really connect with audiences in a meaningful way. So how come you don't? Not in advertising and branded content at any rate. Evidence would suggest that brands fail to use radio's potential as a medium because their simplistic and narcissistic understanding of the world starves radio of the empathy that it craves and is built upon. You've got to stop your medium for being a dump bin for cliche, for lifeless and meaningless insight that never touches people in a powerful or useful way. Then if you don't believe me, go home and listen to your average radio ad break and see whether anything touches you or moves you emotionally, connects with you, or makes you feel differently about the world. Now, better insight means getting a better understanding of your audiences and their lives. And I believe this requires you to reverse the research that your brand undertakes to make it far less narcissistic, just as we did with those mums. I love this pre-Raphaelite version of the Narcissus myth, because it seems to me that's a perfect example of what most brands and brand owners are doing when it comes to research. They're gazing so intensely at their beautiful reflection in the pool, they're completely missing the extraordinary spectre of the consumer on the other side of the pond. In this case, Echo is serving for the analogy as the consumer. And then I think that you also need to think about retail, much as we all love retail, and I'm a massive fan of the powerful effect that advertising and radio in particular can have on retail footfall. If radio is simply seen as a timely and tactical performance medium, we're all selling the unique power of it short, all of us. And finally, something a little more self-critical as the representative of an ad agency. When the content creators on radio are amongst the most consummate communicators in this country, and you've heard from some of them today, the people filling the ad breaks between them are by and large children. Before this, you might have been tempted to call them millennials, but actually they're children that are no more capable of empathizing with and engaging with you, most of your audiences and their complexity than my 10-year-old son, Evan. And I think that's a bit harsh on Evan. I say all of this not to berate any of us in marketing or in the wider radio community, but because we are at a crossroads. We can choose to face our ever more complex world with a genuine desire to make life better and simpler for our audiences, accepting that it is hard and real connection is a difficult beast to muster. Or we can give up and pretend that the world is a very simple place because it makes life so much easier for us. Thank you very much.
This is Next Radio 2016 with Broadcast Bionics. Innovative solutions for creative people.